here with Ari, and we're your hosts for the My Writer podcast. This week, we're on episode 224, and we're asking, how can you use mind mapping? Before we dive into the topic, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening if you haven't already. And if you enjoy the show, please share it with friends and feel free to write a review. And also, we are officially on Ko-fi now, so please do go check that out. But anyway, let's talk about mind mapping for our novels. Mind mapping, in a nutshell, is a diagram used to brainstorm around a central topic or idea. You can use words or images and branch off from the main topic, linking all your thoughts together. Some people call it a spiderweb diagram, thought bubbles, cloud bubbles, or word association. But it's basically a stream of conscious type of thinking or brainstorming. And you can use mind mapping for anything, but for the sake of this podcast episode, we'll discuss how you can use it for your novels. So before we dive into how you can actually use mind mapping, let's talk about some programs that you can use. There are plenty of websites and software such as Lucidchart or Mind Mapping. I have never used either of these, but they exist. If you just Google mind mapping programs, you'll get a whole list of things that pop up. Again, I have never used any of these things because I prefer to use Scapple. And Scapple is by Literature and Latte, which are the same people who made Scrivener. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know how much Ari and I love Scrivener. And I fairly recently discovered Scapple, probably within the past year or so. And it's just bare bones. You open up a new document and it's just a blank thing. You double click on the screen and a bubble will appear, and you can have the main point, and then you double click again somewhere else to make a second point, and then you can drag and drop bubbles to connect them to each other. You can color code the bubbles. You can change the shape of the bubbles. It is a really great tool, and one of my favorite parts about it is that you can have a 30-day free trial. The 30-day is by how many times you open the program. It's not like if you get it on the 1st of the month, you have it through the 30th of the month. It's based on how many times you open the program. So if you only use the program once a week, you technically have the free trial for 30 weeks. If that makes any sense. Hopefully that made sense and I explained that well. But definitely look into Scapple if you do use mind mapping to help out with your novels, which we'll explain how it can help out your novels in a little bit. We probably should have talked about that first. But anyway, something else you can use is Canva. I don't think I really need to explain Canva all that much because I'm pretty sure at this point everybody knows what Canva is. And you can find templates on there. You could probably type in mind mapping and find plenty of templates, or you could just open up a blank Canva and make your own, because they got plenty of elements and little icons and things like that. And you could just make your own, however big, however small you want it, and just have fun with it. I mean, Canva will really allow you to have like full creativity over however you want to design your mind map.
I have to say, when we started this, I said, oh, I haven't used mind mapping software. And then I actually remembered I did. I tried it and I didn't like it. Everything was in these little tiny rectangles and everything was very neat. And I think that's why I didn't like it. It was like little tiny rectangles, and then you'd click off it and then you get the little line that connects them. And obviously the more text you added, the bigger it got. But yeah, it looked a little bit too clinical. And that's why I didn't really look at it.
What software did you use?
It was called something like Mind Mapper or Mind Mapping or Mind Maps or something. I can't remember what it was. It was like I don't think it was something I downloaded. I think you could do it on like directly onto the browser. This was a while ago, but I remember it was on somebody's blog post and they mentioned it, and then I went to find it. Again, this is a while ago, so it might not even be there. It might have changed, but all I remember is it was a bit too clinical looking. So yeah, it wasn't great for me. So I am the same. I've used Scapple. I haven't used it as much as I should have done because I got my 30 days about 2 years ago and I haven't used them up yet. Because I find it's one of those programs where you go on and you mess around and you do loads in like a day, and then you don't go back for it for about 4 weeks. And then you go back on and you just get excited. But that could just be my brain that like once I close it, it's like out of sight, out of mind until I remember and go back into it. But I think one of the things I liked about Scapple is it's so clean, and it's you've not just got the space that you've got on the screen. You can sort of drag the whole, like, I can't think where you can, like the whole background just keeps moving. So it's not like you've got a board on your screen and that's all the space. If you need to, you can sort of grab it and shunt it off to the side and then carry on. So you can make this giant map and then you can zoom out and see it, which is good, but also bad because you can't really print it like that. It's a bit too big. I don't think you can.
You can have printing grids. If you like go to file and stuff, you can add like grids so that you can see where the page will cut off if you print landscape or portrait, whatever the two are called. And so I've done that before, and I've like finagled my bubbles so that way they'll connect to each other horizontally or vertically, but I'll have the line going. So that way when I print it out, I tape the pages together. So I kind of make like one big poster almost.
That makes sense. I didn't know that because I haven't used the 30-day trial and I haven't got all the way through checking everything, but that's good to know because yeah, otherwise you can get a little bit like click happy and end up using a massive amount of the screen and the background to make as many as you want and then don't realize how it prints. But yeah, that's really good. And obviously, yeah, Canva. That's another one I haven't really used as much for that. I use Canva for everything, but I think it's because I know I would get swept up into it, making like a million different things and not get anything done, which is probably why I don't use Canva as often as I should for things like that. But I might go and try that. I'm in the mood to do something a bit more creative today. So yeah, I think I might do that.
Yeah, no, definitely give it a shot. Honestly, I haven't used Canva at all for mind mapping. And I think that's probably because I know I will get too crazy with the creativity part. I will like color code absolutely everything, and I will add little fun designs and fancy fonts and things like that. Whereas Scapple, yeah, you can color code and you can change the shape of the bubbles and stuff. But for the most part, I think, as Ari said, it's clean and you can customize it, but you can't go too crazy with it. So you don't get distracted by making it look pretty. But it still looks pretty. It's great. But with that said, you can just make one yourself and you can make it as simple or as customized as you want. You can do that through like Google Docs or Google Sheets. Probably Sheets would be easier because you can kind of manipulate the cells to make them bigger or smaller or whatever. But you can also just create one by hand in a notebook or like go to the craft store and get yourself a poster and just make a giant one. Why not? Have fun with it. Have a little arts and crafts day with yourself. As I just talked about going, too crazy with the customization on Canva. Here I am telling you to have an arts and crafts day with yourself. It's somewhat more satisfying that way if you do it by hand rather than on the computer.
I have to admit, if I am doing like we called them spider graphs, just so you know, because you had spider web diagrams and thought bubbles, we call them spider graphs. I always prefer to do it by hand. It's one of those few things that I enjoy getting like scraps of paper out and colored pens, because then you can break things down by colors, like world building stuff can be green and characters can be blue and all this. And I will do it by hand on paper. And I don't know why, I find when I do it that way, more ideas come than if I'm doing it online and using the digital. I don't know why that is, but I do like to do it manually myself with paper. Maybe because I just love paper. So
yeah, there's just something satisfying about doing it, about the handwriting. And I think it was you who mentioned that handwriting improves memory. Was it you? We said it in another episode, I think with a guest episode, but I can't remember what it was.
It was in Fran's episode, yes. I did say that.
Yes, you did. See, so that's why it's probably more satisfying, because I think you're working your brain harder. And you're also probably not straining your eyes as much on the screen.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. And it's nice just to be able to sit there and grab the right colored pens and everything. And I mean, I've used spider graphs for not even just for novel things, but like if I'm thinking about something I want to do, or I'm talking, I'm trying to work out what sort of hobbies I want to let go of. Because, if you're anything like me and you've got like a million hobbies, sometimes you have to know when to let go. So then you start like spider graphing out, going like, well, why do I like this? And how much will this cost? And you kind of like, it spreads across the page. And then you think, okay, I'm going to get rid of these hobbies and stick with these. And she says, as she still has too many hobbies going on and she hasn't got rid of stuff that she's supposed to.
Preach. Sorry, join the club. We've all been there, and many of us still are there. But anyway, with that said, how exactly, depending on whatever tool you use, whether you do it yourself, handwriting, or you like get try Scapple out or whatever, how can mind mapping actually help your novels? And it all comes down to outlining and brainstorming. And I want to be clear, even if you're a pantser and you don't outline, mind mapping can still help keep information for your novels in order, because even if you don't plan ahead or anything like that, it's still good to have a list of those notes so that you don't drown in your edits and get lost and confused, because we've all been there as well. But one of my favorite ways I like to use mind mapping is keep a timeline, and that can be through the book's events, or I also use it as like a series timeline, because like with my mystery novel, a lot of what happens in book one, there's a lot of stuff that happened before book one. So I have a timeline of all of those events leading up to book one. And then I have a separate timeline of all the events in book one. And then from there, I kind of branch off to what events happened in book one that kind of carry over to book two, and what caused book two, and why this happened because it happened in the prequel, and so on and so forth. And it really just helps keep everything in order. And yes, I do get a little excessive and I add the month and the year and try to figure out everybody's ages, even though it's not necessarily needed in some cases, but it helps me. And I mean, well, to be brutally honest, it's one of the reasons I haven't finished the edits yet. It's because I can't do math. But that's a great way, if especially if you write series, or if you just have a big tome of a book that a lot of crap happens in it. It's good to keep a list of events in order. And especially also if you have dual POVs as well, it can help, because if something is happening to one character over here at this time and then something else is happening to another character the exact same time, you can kind of have the parallel timelines going, so you can visually see how, their paths will eventually intersect, and,
No, I see that. Timelines are great, especially as you said, trying to keep track of everything. If you've got multiple plot lines, oh my gosh. I have written stories where it was nighttime for like half of the book. And that wasn't even the vampire story I was writing, where you understand if it's going to be nighttime. It just felt like it was one long night. And it's like, okay, this is not an episode of 24. This is not, all this stuff could not have happened in one night. I need to break it up. And it's weird how if you don't keep an eye on your timelines, things just fly out the window if you're not watching. So, but I like how you do it for your, like, not the prologue exactly, not the prologue, what's the thing? Like for like the pre-story before the story, because you're right, things happen to characters and they come in with things that already have happened to them, and having that information is a really good point. With that, I'm going to go to what I like to use mine for, which is brainstorming plot ideas. And this is especially helpful for if you're writing a series, and whether it's an episodic series or a carry-on series, sometimes just sort of like having that free-flowing thoughts of the different ideas and then branching out to them, because you might have a couple of really good plot ideas for some of your books in a series. But if you do a mind map and brainstorm them, you'll find that some of those ideas have more branches coming off. There's more options on some of the plot ideas than others. And maybe you didn't notice that. Maybe when you came up with your ideas, you're like, yeah, they're all equal. And actually, they're not. Some have better structure development already, better character development. It gives you more options for spin-offs, or it gives you more options for the second or third or fourth book. And by doing the kind of mind map of that, it can really help. So I love doing my plot ideas on there. I do get annoyed when I realize that one of my ideas is not strong enough, and I then start obsessing about making it strong enough rather than focusing on the ones that already are strong enough. But that's just me.
and you can do it. You can have like a little puzzle. If you just brainstorm plot ideas, and as like the ideas come to you, you could just throw them onto the map, and then you can later on try to piece them together to figure out which plot points fit and which don't, and which might fit well over here, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, yay for extra procrastination, right? But it's all brainstorming and it's all working, so it's fine. We'll overlook it. Something else that I really like using mind mapping for is to create world maps and just kind of keep track of the different settings and places within the novel. This works really well. Like if you're writing a fantasy novel, you can have your worlds as the main topic, and then you can branch it off into the different countries, and then each country can branch off into different like states, cities, towns, whatever, however you create your map. Especially if you're not great at drawing or you don't want to use map making software, you can just kind of have the skeleton of the map through the mind map. Saying map a lot. Sorry.
If this was a drinking game, people would be sloshed by now with how often we've said the word map.
Yeah, they would. I don't know how else to describe it though, but there you go. Map. Map, map, map. You could also just use it as like a basic trail of where your characters go throughout the novel. So they start in one place and then you can have the next bubble be the next place and so on and so forth. And you can kind of, if you want to figure out more of your world map, you can kind of figure out like how long it takes them to get from point A to point B. And from that, if they want to go to a third place but take a different route, how long would it take them then? And it doesn't need to be linear. You can have all the bubbles just be everywhere.
I bet that would work really well, especially if you had like a group of characters that then fork off, like how in Lord of the Rings, they all sort of forked off in different places. They all started in one group. Well, not started, but when they were in can't remember the Elfin City. Can't remember at all. It's gone right out of my head. What was it called? Oh my god, it began with E, didn't it? If we remember, Rachel will put a card up with it saying like Avondale, I don't know, something like that.
Riverdale.
Riverdale. Yeah, it began with an
yes.
R, obviously. Look, I am way past the age of having a good memory.
So. I mean, clearly we just need to watch Lord of the Rings again.
We do. It's been a while. I need to go watch it.
There you go.
Anyway, what the hell was I saying? Give me a minute. Yes, how they all started in Rivendell when they, decided what they were going to do with the ring, and then like they started off together as a fellowship, and then they started breaking up. That would be really good, saying, right, well, where does this group of characters go, and how do they break up again? Maybe there's one person like faffs off into a forest, and the others carry on down the river. So that would be quite useful. That was not worth the effort, was it? You're trying to remember words. Oh my gosh. Anyway, let's just go to another point. Relationships. Sounds really random. I like tracking family trees and relationships with mind maps, especially if you've got like the main character in the center. It's like, okay, how are they related to this person? How is that person related to that person? Because a lot of books, or maybe it's just the books I have, they have things like, it's like, oh, someone's having a secret affair, or someone's, the unrecognized heir to the throne. If there's all these like intricacies that can happen with relationships in a novel, and sometimes you need to remember who the hell everybody is and who they've met along the way and how those relationships and those friendships connected and broke up. And again, I really like mind mapping for that. I think it's really good for people who take things in more visually rather than just like everything being written down as a list. That's why I think mind mapping works. So if you're not sure what to do, I think that works really well. But yeah, try it with relationships. You'll be surprised, especially if you've got family trees and you're breaking down from like, ancestors at the top right down to the main characters and their kids and everything.
That's actually a really good idea. I never thought to do family trees before, because to me, family trees are family trees, but they're mind maps. They're just more vertical. Like when you think of a mind map in your head, I always think of something more horizontal. I don't know. That's just me probably. But yeah, family trees, it's a literal mind map.
It
never really put that together.
If you put the main character in the center and fork out from them, it's like, right, how do they know? Like, obviously, these are their parents, that's their sibling, that's their niece, that's their aunt, that's their child, that's their neighbor. Oh my gosh, they're having an affair with their neighbor. Their neighbor's husband is over here. And it just it gives you this more interesting way of seeing it rather than just the basics of this person is married to this person, these are their kids.
More procrastination. Woohoo! I'll have to do that for my novels now.
We don't need anything extra to procrastinate. We have so many ideas for that. You could do a mind map for your procrastination tools. Hey. I am just going to throw in one other thing I forgot. It's not about novels specifically. It's about authoring, I have often used mind maps in authoring. Let me explain. Being an author, being a writer is a business if you are thinking of publishing, selling, everything. And there's marketing involved. And again, because I don't always work well with just lists, I like visual things. I have found it really useful to make a mind map and say, right, okay, what are the sort of marketing things you would do offline? What are the sort of marketing things you would do online? What are the sort of marketing things you do just after launch, before launch, well after launch? There are so many things that are suggested for marketing tactics. And sometimes having it all mapped out to see what's the best, you know, which one has the biggest growth options, which one has the biggest possibility for reaching a larger audience, which ones are the most time consuming, which ones cost the most. I have found putting things like that on a mind map, I did it for my business, and it really helped me solidify the paths I wanted to take, because it's so easy when you're running a business to sort of go, oh, wow, these are all the marketing options. I'll just do them all, instead of thinking, okay, I have limited amount of funds or a limited amount of time right now. Which ones would work best in my current situation, or which ones are trending more at the moment? Which ones have the biggest impact? And they're not all the same. So that's just an extra thought. It doesn't have to be specifically for writing and the novel. It can be for the author side, the business side.
You gotta be thinking, you can use it kind of like a step-by-step guide at the same time too, because if there's like a specific marketing tactic you want to do, you can have that be like a branching point of the marketing bubble, and then have the steps branch off of that. And when you complete this bubble, then you can move on to the next bubble, and so on and so forth. You can even do that for the writing process too, and kind of have like kind of streamline, you know, your book from start to finish, and just the actual process of you going through writing said book and editing and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, but you can use mind mapping for a lot more outside of your novels, rather than just like deep diving into your novel and what your story actually is about. That's a really good point. I like that.
I think especially if there are people listening to this and you realize it's like, if you're following a long list and you struggle with that, seeing something differently, seeing something like laid out differently, it can make a difference. So just consider it. Consider trying it. Like I did it for my website. Like you put your website at the beginning, it's like, right, what does the website need? It needs these pages. It needs, you know, funnels. It needs it needs like display. So that's like your banner and your avatar and the basic theme you have for your website. And then it's like, right, how do you get connections to your readers? That would be the newsletter that's connected to it. And then you start realizing, okay, this is actually a bigger task than I realized. But when it's mind mapped out rather than listed, I find it's easier to grasp how big the task is and how to break it down into smaller steps, because you've kind of already broken it down into smaller steps.
It's like similar when we always say that when you edit your manuscript, change the font or change the color or change the size or whatever. That's kind of what we're going for here. If you use mind mapping, instead of using just a basic checklist or however you write out your to-do list or your steps or whatever, create a mind map and just see it from a different perspective. And I guarantee it'll help you be more productive, even though we were just talking about how it's very easy to use mind mapping to procrastinate. So we're going to leave that little tidbit of advice with you guys, and we'll end the episode here. We are going to turn it over to you guys. Do you use mind mapping? And if so, what do you use and how do you use it? And if not, would you consider it? Let us know your answers in the comments so we can chat. And remember, we release a new episode every Wednesday. Next week, we're discussing deconstructing a story. To ensure you don't miss it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out. As always, thanks for listening to the Merry Writer Podcast. We'll see you next week. This podcast is brought to you by Writer's Block. We hate our brains. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons